Well, most people are working toward retirement, but what happens if you get all the way there and then it's not as satisfying as you expected? Seems crazy. In a recent Mass Mutual survey, though, a third of all Americans report that they're not happier after they retire. Here to help us understand why that is and how to change it is money and business expert Derrick Kinney. Derrick, thanks so much for being here this afternoon. This seems counterintuitive for those of us who are, slogging through it day in and day out working, that, you get to retirement and you're not happy. What is the top reason that retirees feel less happy?
Yeah, Jason, it's a big concern because people work all their lives hoping to retire. Then they get there and they're severely disappointed. The number one issue is a lack of social interaction because they leave their company, they've got built-in relationships, whether they like their boss or not. Typically, they tend to like the people they work with. And once they leave that environment, it's often hard to replicate that because the older people we know it's harder to develop relationships and build friendships. So people feel isolated and alone. Then they worry about running out of money at the same time. It's a recipe for retirement disaster.
So you miss that socialization that you've been getting at work and probably maybe too that sense of purpose. So I guess that's a good warning to those of us who are still working every day. Kind of try to build that purpose and that outside of work socialization as you go because, one day, hopefully, we all get to retirement. Now, the survey says that many people's expectations are different than what they experience in retirement. What do you think is causing sort of that drop-off there between expectation and reality?
Well, the big difference here is how will your significant other handle either being with you more often or blending the two schedules together. And we joke about it, but it's a very real issue because let's say one spouse travels and one is at home all the time. Well, the spouse has been on the road, comes home and suddenly wants to be at home. And the spouse who's been home now wants to travel and now there's conflict. And so the way around that is to have some very open, candid dialogue 6 to 12 months before you retire to really get a clear picture as to what each of you want in retirement. Sometimes you may want time by yourself, some together, some with friends, but when you can talk about it and you have a plan to retire to something and not just from something, that's really the key.
That's interesting, Derrick. You're always telling us about the money aspect of things. And yeah, you want to prepare, financially for retirement, but it sounds like you're saying there's so much stuff to the side of money that you should be preparing for as well as you're heading there.
That's exactly right. And what leads then to dashed expectations is thinking, I've got enough money to retire. We, of course, will be happy. But if you haven't really talked through it and you're not on the same page, we know that couples that plan together and really have a strategy together tend to stay together, and those that don't won't. And we don't want that to happen to you in retirement.
Okay, so let's talk about this. We're talking about this big survey. So many people who got into retirement weren't happy. What were some of the worries or the concerns that this group of retirees had when they got there to retirement?
Yeah, number one reason, Jason, was running out of money and the worry, what would they do if they did? Because they realized Social Security can only take them so far. If they had a company pension, let's say they were a teacher or they worked for the city or the state, they knew what their fixed budget was, but when their friends came knocking and said, hey, let's go on that cruise or take that trip, now they worry about if they do that, might it hurt them financially? That's number one. Number two is, what will their identity be in retirement? So many people derive so much of their fulfillment and their identity from the job they have or the relationships they had, especially if you were a mom or a dad who stayed at home and now your kids are out of the house and now you wonder, well, who am I? All of that can really cause some conflict that not only money can't cover, but if you don't know where you're going as a couple or as a family, you can really hurt yourself financially.
All right, so Derrick, if we've got people watching right now who may be close to retirement or feel like they're not nearly close enough to retirement, but they're trying to get there, what would you tell them? What do they do now to ensure that they actually, get to retirement and enjoy it?
Yeah, two big things. First of all, live on a practice retirement budget 6 to 12 months before you retire. So identify how much money you think you'll need to live on, and then actually practice living on that while you're still working to test and confirm if that is enough. And that typically helps people dramatically, in many cases, be able to retire early, but it gives them confidence of when they can retire and how much it takes. And then number two, know what a purpose is or a game plan is for your retirement. Let's say you say, I want to sell the house and buy an RV. Kick the tires first, rent the RV for the weekend, test it, see if you like it before you sell the house to buy the RV.
Yeah, because if you hate driving and you get into that RV and you don't have a house to go home to anymore, that's going to be a really bad ending. Some
Terrible
great advice.
situation. We don't want that.
So think about all of this stuff ahead of time is the going away message here. And I really do think that this, I mean, you're right, we joke about this stuff, but it's important to think about it before you get there. Derrick, thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you, Jason.
Derrick Kinney, the Good Money Framework. Always appreciate the advice.